the possibility that harm, for example death, injury, or illness that might occur when exposed to a hazard.
What is risk assessment? Risk assessment is the overall process of hazard identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, and risk control. A risk assessment is a thorough look at your workplace to identify the things, situations, processes, etc. that may cause harm, particularly to people.
What is risk control? It is actions implementing risk evaluation decisions. It can involve monitoring, re-evaluation, and compliance with decisions.
What is risk analysis? It is a process for comprehending the nature of hazards and determining the level of risk. It provides a basis for risk evaluation and decisions about risk control. Information can include current and historical data, theoretical analysis, informed opinions, and the concerns of stakeholders. Risk analysis includes risk estimation.
What is risk evaluation? It is the process of comparing an estimated risk against given risk criteria to determine the significance of the risk.
Why is risk assessment important? Number 1. It creates awareness of hazards and risk. Number 2. It identifies who may be at risk, for example, employees, cleaners, visitors, contractors, the public, and etc. Number 3. It determines whether a control program is required for a particular hazard. Number 4. Determine if existing control measures are adequate or if more should be done. Number 5. It prevents injuries or illnesses, especially when done at the design or planning stage. Number 6. It prioritizes hazards and control measures. And lastly, it meets legal requirements where applicable.
What is the goal of risk assessment? The aim of the risk assessment process is to evaluate hazards, then remove the hazards or minimize the level of its risk by adding control measures as necessary. The goal is to try to answer the following questions. A. What can happen and under what circumstances? B. What are the possible consequences? C. How likely are the possible consequences to occur? And D. Is the risk controlled effectively, or is further action required?
How do you plan for a risk assessment? A. What the scope of your risk assessment? B. The resources needed. C. What type of risk analysis measures will be used? D. Who are the stakeholders involved? E. What relevant laws, regulations, codes, or standards may apply in your jurisdiction, as well as organizational policies and procedures?
When should a risk assessment be done? Before new process or activities are introduced, before changes are introduced to existing process or activities, including when products, machinery, tools, equipment changes, or new information concerning harm when hazards are identified.
How is a risk assessment done? Assessment should be done by a competent person or a team of individuals who have a good working knowledge of the situation being studied. In general, to do an assessment, you should: Number 1. Identify hazards. Number 2. Determine the likelihood of harm, such as injury or illness occurring, and its severity. Number 3. Consider normal operational situations as well as non-standard events such as maintenance, shutdowns, power outages, emergencies, extreme weathers, and etc. Number 4. Review all available health and safety information about the hazards. Number 5. Understand the minimum legislated requirements for your jurisdiction. Number 6. Identify actions necessary to eliminate the hazard or control the risk using hierarchy of risk control methods. Number 7. Evaluate to confirm if the hazard has been eliminated or if the risk is appropriately controlled.
When doing an assessment, also take into account A. The methods and procedures used in the processing, use, handling, or storage of the substance. B. The actual and the potential exposure of workers. Example, how many workers may be exposed. The measures and the procedures necessary to control such exposure by means of engineering controls, work practices, and hygiene practices in facilities. D. The duration and frequency of the task, like how long and how often a task is done. E. The location where the task is done. Letter F. The machinery, tools, materials, etc. that are used in the operation and how they are used. G. Any possible interactions with other activities in the area and if the task could affect other. H. The life cycle of the product, process, or service. I. The education and training the workers have received. J. How a person would react in a particular situation. Example. What would be the most common reaction by a person if the machine failed or malfunctioned? What documentation should be done for a risk assessment? Keeping your records of assessment and any control actions taken is very important. You may be required to store assessments for a specific number of years. Check for local requirements in your jurisdiction. The level of documentation or record keeping will depend on, first, level of risk involved. Next is legislated requirements, and lastly, requirements of any management systems that may be in place. Lastly, requirements of any management systems that may be in place.
How are risks ranked or prioritized? Ranking hazards requires the knowledge of workplace activities, urgency of the situations, and most importantly, objective judgment. For simple or less complex situations, an assessment can literally be a discussion or brainstorming session based on knowledge and experience. For more complex situations, a team of knowledgeable personnel who are familiar with the work is usually necessary. Remember to include factors that contribute to the level of risk, such as the work environment. Example is layout and condition. The systems of work being used, the range of foreseeable conditions, the way the source may cause harm, example, inhalation and ingestion. How often and how much a person will be exposed, the interaction, capability, skill, experience of workers who do the work. Example of risk assessment. The task is delivering product to customers. The possible hazards are as follows. First, drivers work alone. The risk may be unable to call for help if needed. Second is, drivers have to occasionally work long hours. The risk is fatigue, short rest time between shifts. The third hazard is, drivers are often in very congested traffic. The risk is increased chance of collision, longer working hours. The fourth hazard is, drivers have to lift boxes when delivering products. The risk is injury to back from lifting, reaching, carrying, and others. As an example, consider this simple risk matrix. Table 1 shows the relationship between the probability and the severity. Severity rating in this example represent the high severity rating, the medium severity rating, and the low severity rating. The high severity rating includes major fracture, poisoning, significant loss of blood, serious head injury, or fatal diseases. The medium severity rating includes sprain, strain, localized burn, dermatitis, asthma, and injury requiring days off work. Low severity rating includes an injury that requires first aid only, short-term pain, irritation, or dizziness. Probability rating in these examples represent the high, medium, and low probability rating. The high probability rating likely to be experienced once or twice a year by an individual. The medium probability rating may be experienced once every 5 years by an individual, and the low probability rating may occur once during a working lifetime.
Why is it important to review and monitor the assessments? It is important to know if your risk assessment was complete and accurate. It is also essential to be sure that any chances in the workplace have not introduced new hazards or changed hazards that were once ranked as lower priority to a higher priority. It is a good practice to review your assessment on a regular basis to make sure your control methods are effective.
What is hazard? Hazard refers to a situation or thing that has the potential to harm a person. Hazards at work may include noisy machinery, a moving forklift, chemicals, electricity, working at heights, a repetitive job, bullying, and violence at the workplace.
What is hazard identification? It is the process of finding, listing, and characterizing hazards and risk factors that have the potential to cause harm.
How are the hazards identified? To be sure that all hazards are found, look at all aspects of the work, include non-routine activities such as maintenance, repair, or cleaning. Look at accident or incident or near-miss records. Include people who work off-site either at home, on other job sites, drivers, teleworkers, with clients, etc. Look at the way the work is organized or done, including the experience of people doing the work, systems being used, and others. Look at foreseeable and usual conditions, for example, possible impact on hazard control procedures that may be unavailable in an emergency situation, power outage, and others. Determine whether a product, machine, or equipment can be intentionally or unintentionally changed. Example, a safety guard that could be removed. Review all the phases of the life cycle. Examine risk to visitors or the public. Consider the groups of people that may have a different level of risk, such as young or inexperienced workers, persons with disabilities, or new or expectant mothers.
What are the methods of hazard control?
Your records should show you that you, letter A, conducted a good hazard review, letter B, determined the risk of those hazards, letter C, implemented control measures suitable for the risk, and letter D, reviewed and monitored all hazards in the workplace.